critically analyzing global affairs. The Muckrakers on today's News Talk, TNT.
Well, hello and a very warm welcome back to the Muckrakers with me, Andrew Eborn, and a very happy Canada Day to everybody celebrating that today. As always, here on the Muckrakers, we pledge to tackle the most pressing and controversial news issues of our time. Our mission is to provide more light and less heat on the subjects that matter to you in our unquavering quest to uncover the truth. Well, today we're going to unpack the latest in the general election happening here in the UK, with only 3 more days to go of campaigning before what many predict will be STARMERGEDDON. What can we do to avoid it? Well, here to help us discover that, and joined with me, Andrew Eborn, by also Nadia Klok and Nadia Klok. Welcome to both of you.
Hello. Thank you.
Now, let me tell you a bit about each of them. Both of them are candidates in this election, which will make it very interesting. And you can probably tell by their rosettes. Nadia Klok is the Reform UK candidate for Bromley and Biggin Hill constituency. And Nadia Klok is the Workers' Party of Britain candidate for Brent West and the London secretary of the party. And George Galloway, who I quote virtually every single show about 2 cheeks of the same backside. That's his party as well. Let me start with you, Nadia, then. What do you see as the most important issue in this general election campaign?
Well, it's poverty disparity between the super rich and the poor. So basically, the middle classes are being pushed down with the working classes, and everyone's being affected now. At the moment, our foreign policies are really important. So that means a possible war with Russia, all-out war, conscription, which nobody wants to see. And also the genocide currently happening in Gaza. Our party, our stance, we cannot support this genocide. We cannot support what's going on. We need to support allies who abide by the Geneva Convention and don't break it on an everyday basis.
Okay, Alan?
Well, I agree on the cost of living crisis, but we may disagree on the cause of it. I don't think it's caused by disparity, although that is there quite clearly, and we need to change our tax to actually reflect that to a certain degree. But I think 2 things. The main reason we're having this is the mass immigration, which is affecting just about every single public sector. And it's suppressing wages as well, because it's low-skilled immigration, not chosen immigration. We do need immigration. We are a pro-immigration party, but we just need to choose who we come in. If we need doctors, plasterers, gardeners, that's who we'll bring in. But the biggest impact, which is causing people problems money-wise, has got to be net zero. It is something no one voted for. It wasn't even voted for in the Commons. It went through on a nod. And quite unusually, it was a bill that went through uncosted. That never normally happens. The reason it wasn't costed is because you can't cost it, because the technology to get there doesn't exist yet. And, there's £2 trillion just to part decarbonise the grid. So, and the transport sector is bigger than that. So we are talking the greatest expense this country will ever face, and it's been nodded through. So, we are the only party advocating let's have a proper, serious look at net zero.
And I think you're actually going even further than that. I had Ben Habib on the show and also Dr. David Bull just last week. And I know Nigel Farage and also Richard Tice very well. I think your commitment actually is to abandon it altogether and save billions. Is that right?
Oh, it is, yes. But I like to speak in moderate terms. But, a lot of people, we like to have conversation. We're not like the hard left, where they point and shout at you and try and close down conversation and cancel you. We actually are all about debate and conversation. It's how democracy should work. They don't want people to have a choice. We've seen the media with their dirty tactics trying to shut down our party because that is a direct attack on democracy. Even if you don't like our policy, we have the right to exist and to create an opposition and not be shut down. This is a very deep problem the society has at the moment. And what we're drifting towards is we're moving from a 2-party system potentially to a 1-party system. The hard left are doing everything in their power to try and ensure that they will never be voted out in future. by giving sort of foreign nationals the vote, by giving children the vote, that is going to backfire on them tremendously. Because guess what? Kids like to rebel. They don't like to go with the standard option. And now that the left wing has got all this indoctrination in all of the education establishments, the left wing is the norm. So if any kid wants to rebel, they've got to go against the all this indoctrination they've been drip fed for years. So that's why I'm absolutely flabbergasted about the amount of support we are getting from the youth of today. Just about every son and daughter of all my friends are coming to us saying we're supporting reform because we are anti-establishment, and that's what the kids like. They want to rebel a little bit. So we are, you know, and I believe, Nadia, your party is as well. You're very anti-establishment. So I think we're probably going to agree on more things than you think. You know, if you're after
I think we are. Sounds like it. I've been nodding away so far. You know, you see, you mentioned about the mass illegal immigration, which we also are against, but we need to stop the wars that create them. And that includes, yeah. So when Gaddafi was removed, he was responsible for stopping all the boats. So we kind of shot ourselves in the foot there.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you. Nigel said that, you know, he was against the last two wars. And we've got, you know, a lot of American foreign policy. If you look back over decades, it hasn't been the best, shall we say.
Absolutely not. No.
Yeah.
No. And I think that's what we're fighting against. It's sorry, my dear.
No, go for it. There's a slight delay. Go for it.
So I think we're both against that American control of Britain. And I think that's the nail on the head here. We need to regain our sovereignty.
Yeah, and can I add to that it's not necessarily just America as in the country's leader. It's globalism and global socialism, because we have these external unelected supranational bodies like the WEF, the WHO, the UN, who are all trying to sovereign grab. They're trying to take control of our borders, our medical decisions. Now, all of this should, for a sovereign nation, should be our decision. So we are going to leave the ECHR if we're in power. We'll leave the WEF and the WHO. So it's, you know, we're quite clear. We want to run our country so we can look after our own citizens. We are a UK-centric party. We put our citizens first before these globalist bodies.
Right. So
it is interesting. Yes, it is interesting because you're getting this sort of country first, which is very sort of Trump speak, isn't it? It's sort of America first. Where do you stand on that, Nadia?
So we are anti-nationalists, but we do believe in patriotism. And there's a fine line between both of them. Nationalism is a love of your own based on the hate of others. Patriotism, you're okay with the world, you're all right with the world. But when your country's in need, you'll come to its aid. And that's the difference. So as a party, with what's happening in America, and Alan is completely right, there are outside bodies like the WEF that have too much control and too much say in our rules and the way we do things as a country. So, for example, that the importing of wokeism. We're an anti-woke party. And if people say, oh, it's left to be woke, we're not that. You see, we have to be careful of the labels. So what's left, what's right, what's lefty. Yeah. It's neoliberalism with identity politics. We don't care who you are, where you come from, your background, as long as where your heart and your mind is set. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I've just had lunch last week with Eric Kaufman. And, you know, he's a professor at the uni and he's done his woke diploma. And I know people that have actually been on that. And, you know, there's no better man to actually describe woke and the fact that it's not all on the left. And, you know, the Tory party has been in power when it's all hit us. You know, there was some constitutional vandalism done by Tony Blair, which everyone would have hoped that the Tory party would have removed when they got into power with their 80-seat majority. However, they didn't. So we've got things like the Gender Equality Act, you know, which should have been just got rid of on day one. And that has allowed the gender ideology to seep into all of our public bodies, the armed forces, the police, and it's getting rammed down our children's throats at school.
Yeah.
And, that we'll get rid of that on day one. So
it's the perversion that is entering the schools that a lot of parents I've talked to are concerned about. It's exposing children and sexualizing them at a young age. They should be playing in the playground, cards, hopscotch, Red Rover, not learning at 5 to 6 about what gender they could be or, what sex. I learned sex education at 11 and that was fine. That was absolutely fine for me. It wasn't, it wasn't too young, but it was at that. So I don't see why they're pushing it younger. It's confusing children. It is confusing children to say, oh, you can be whatever you want. No, you can't. Stop importing mental health issues on our kids. Stop it now. I'm a mother of 2. Okay. I say no.
I'm a father of 2. And, it's going to get worse under Keir Starmer, isn't it? Because he's been unlucky. I believe he said the other day he slept with 100 women, and one of those women had a penis, which is quite unlucky. So I've never been with 100 women, but I've never come across a woman with a penis. So I think I'm lucky in that respect.
Yeah, you make some very, very interesting points, and it is interesting to hear you both agree on this, because what children should be taught is respect. There's a biology to sex which they don't need to know about until it's age appropriate. But teaching people respect has got to be key, hasn't it? I do want to move on just briefly, though, to the media coverage of both of your parties, because we see it splashed all over the media about Labour and the Conservatives and so on and so forth. Your party, Nadia, barely gets a look in. What's your take on it?
It's lack of freedom of speech. It's gagging. I mean, George Galloway wasn't even invited to the leadership debate. That's how bad it is in this country now. God, this once beautiful, democratic, free speech country island has just turned and changed. What's happened? And that's why I say it's imported. It's imported from somewhere, this gagging. Someone wants us to fight with Russia, because that's one of our main points. We will fight tooth and nail against conscription. To fight a war, Zelensky's war. I'm sorry, Alan, I know Richard Tice, he's been waving that Ukrainian flag, but Nigel Farage is a bit more settled, I think, in his views. I've spoken to him privately on this, and I understand where he comes from.
Nigel's practically an amateur historian when it comes to wars and conflicts. And he's got perfect recall on memory. So he's a really difficult guy to argue against. So, when Nigel says something, pretty much he's got it on the nail. And George Galloway is such good value for money, isn't he? I'm disappointed he's not in the debates as well, to be honest. But I know where a lot of this
able to handle him.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Same as Nigel. They can't handle these people. But Davos, we get our elected leaders in closed rooms, shut behind doors, no minutes come out of these, and they're in these closed rooms with global billionaires who've got their ear. I want to know what's said. I want to know what's going on. I want to know what's being tried.
Especially if it influences the citizens of this country. Absolutely.
End. Yeah, we need trust and we need transparency in British politics. There's currently zero trust in British politics. And that's part of our job, is to put the trust back in with transparency. In government.
Trust and transparency. I always say that trust comes in on foot and leaves on horseback. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be looking at the official complaint that Reform has made against Channel 4. Don't go away.
The Muckrakers are restless. This is today's News Talk, TNT.
Welcome back to the Muckrakers with me, Andrew Eborn. I'm joined today by the brilliant Alan Cook and Nadia Klok, and we're looking at what we can do to avoid STARMERGEDDON in the next few days. And I've been looking at the media coverage. It's interesting because the gallery were telling Nadia she needs to adjust her camera. It's too much to the left. And I think that's the first time everybody's told you on that sort of basis. It's going to be good. But I do want to look at Reform UK. We had Dr. David Bull on the show on Friday, and we broke the story about Alan Parker. He talked about this in the fact that he may well be an actor, and this whole thing might have been set up. And I've been digging deep into this story. I've seen some of the original videos. I've seen his casting thing with his normal posh voice and how he can put on this rough voice and how he specializes in undercover reporting and so on and so forth. And there are lots of questions to be answered. And the story broke here on the Muckrakers with Andrew Eborn. And thank you for Dr. David Bull for that. Alan, you're going to give us another exclusive. I want to talk about the official complaint that Reform has now made against Channel 4 over electoral interfering. And tell me what's the latest on that?
Well, first of all, Dr. David Bull, I did challenge him to a shirt off about a year ago because he was actually famous for wearing crazy shirts. And I think I've beaten him on that one. Every time I'm on a more serious note, oh my God, they've got history on doing this to Nigel before. So they're just doing the same as the stitch-up they did for the Brexit Party. And but they've over-egged it quite clearly. I think the idea was that this guy would actually try and get other people to say bad things on camera, and he couldn't get them to do that. It didn't happen. So in the end, they've just used footage of him playing his Alf Garnick, all blimey, mate, rough voice, and they've used that instead. Clearly they wanted to get the damage out there, and they didn't really care how bloody obvious it was. Because they've made it very, very clearly obvious this is a setup. The fact that he specialises in undercover filming and putting on rough voices, and the fact that he's worked for Channel 4 before, and Channel 4 said, "Oh, we didn't pay the man." That just opens up more questions of, well, how did he get paid, and was it via the production company? They haven't said. They haven't done it that way. If Channel 4 actually wanted to put this to bed, they could do quite easily by releasing all of the footage of that day. And then, but however, the footage is bound to have the undercover guy talking to him, all right, someone's coming, let's get back into character. And all of that sort of stuff is probably on there. And they haven't released the footage. So that looks really, really poor from their side. And, just lends extra weight to the fact that this is just a really, really badly operated stitch-up.
So Channel 4 have denied this. What evidence do you have that they knew that this guy was an actor and that they actually paid him to do and say what he said?
Well, we're looking for the smoking gun, aren't we? Because if this is, electoral interference is a really serious offence. The only time Nigel has ever actually properly stood to be an MP, most of the times he's done it, it's been as a protest vote with knowing that you're never going to win, but it's good publicity for the party. And when he was down in Ramsgate, he actually stood properly, and he came in a close second, but the Tories broke the rules. They spent too much. They tried to hide it up. And the guy who was behind that ended up with a 9-month prison sentence. Which was, luckily for him, suspended. But because of that, Nigel didn't get into Parliament that time round. So, they know he's going to pretty much win in Clapton, I believe. So it's a last-ditch attempt to get him. But evidence-wise, there's just an awful lot of circumstantial evidence. We'll need to, it depends. If the police take this seriously, which they ought to, then, okay, they need to get this guy's phone, look at his WhatsApp, look at his text messages, look at the telephone conversations. Has he got the production company and his phone? Has he phoned them? Check his emails. They need to do a proper investigation, and then they can either say, yes, it was a setup, or no, it wasn't. Now, check his bank account. It's where has he been paid from a production company recently? And we all know he's worked for Channel 4 before. And it's just, if it is not a setup, oh my God, the odds are incredible. It's the sort of odds the Tory party would like to put money on, put it that way.
Yeah, I understand he's been in a Ricky Gervais thing about basically David Brent on the road. I think he was in the film for that. And he's a member of Equity and so on and so forth. And from what I can see, he's been inundated with phone calls from everybody trying to get to the bottom of this. What's your take on it, Nadia?
Well, at first I was quite confused. I thought it was a candidate, but then I found out, I think from Nextdoor, the Nextdoor app, someone messaged said, no, actually it's one of the campaigners, and they told me it was a paid actor.
It wasn't even a campaigner. He just walked in off the street into the office. So he'd never campaigned for us before. He'd never worked for us before. He's never supported us before. He just walked in off the street into the office and said, I'd like to help deliver leaflets. So there's no history of him helping the party as well. Which
Right. Okay. So are you sure this actor hasn't got any conservative views anyway? Underneath, have you checked that person's social media? No. So really, I can't comment on that, but you are going to get saboteurs. I assure you, that's going to happen. If you go against the narrative and your party stands against the agenda that they're trying to push on every normal human being on this island, yes, you're going to get saboteurs, unfortunately. And I can't say more than that, but if Reform, I think it's Reform or Nigel Farage, have taken steps and measures, legal action, then I think they've also got a point to say on that.
Yeah,
but the legal action will actually happen afterwards, won't it? It would be too late. If we find a smoking gun, that, Channel 4 as a company is finished pretty much. But they may say, plausible deniability. It was the production company we didn't know, which is, always a fallback, one level of separation, from there. But, he was in character when he walked into the office. He wasn't himself. Why would you do that? It's that in itself is very odd. But yes, we are doing everything we can to actually get to the bottom of this. Richard and Nigel have good representation legally. When the BBC called us far right, the lawyers were straight onto them, and a grovelling apology literally hours later. That's the only attack they have on us. They don't attack our policy. They tend to attack us for being something we're not, actually. We're out.
Could I kindly intervene?
Left and centre right.
Nadia, yes. Nadia.
Could I kindly intervene? So
sure.
There are some comments that I've seen from some of the candidates. Now, I've been debating one on Nextdoor. One of your candidates, Ian Collier, he's standing in Brent West. And he refused to do a hustings with me. He mentioned that it would be a security risk. However, he wants to debate me online on Nextdoor. So he made a comment and he kept mentioning Iran. Now, for me, as a Briton, I don't really want war with Iran. I don't think it really benefits us. It might benefit Israel, but not us. And I think we've been into far too many wars. He's a Reform candidate. So I'm just wondering, Alan, because I think you're a different person, if I'm honest, and all candidates are different.
Of course.
What do you think about his comments? So he was calling us quite sectarian, and he also said I think on the lines of we're in love with Iran or something like that. We like the world. We don't want war with the world. We want to trade.
No, I'm with you. I've got some Iranian friends, so and I love the food. But I can't comment on on Ian's whatever he said in the context he said. Okay. I'll talk for myself, and I'm anti-war. War is the most vile thing. You only get one life, and why give it away because the nation you happen to be born in has got a certain view? So no, I'm war is the most vile thing in this world. Okay. And no, I think war should be avoided at all cost.
Yeah, absolutely. Bravo. And I think that it's absolutely right to say that people, both sides, are pro-peace. It doesn't mean you're anti-Semitic. It doesn't mean you're necessarily pro-Russian. What you are is pro-peace. And it is interesting because it raises an interesting point, which both Alan and Nadia mentioned, is that you can't really control your candidates. And apart from, obviously, this actor, which will be investigated, there have been a few other troubles because the vetting procedure hasn't been as stringent as it might have been. Talk to me about about that, Alan? What's the latest from the inside?
Well, I'm still here, so I'm presuming my vetting went okay. I haven't been a big social media user. We used it for family and friends. So a lot of our friends actually moved all the way around the globe. So when their kids are growing up, you want to watch their kids growing up as they want to watch yours. So we use things like Facebook for the reason it was set up. We had about 30 friends on there, and we just post pictures of your kid winning an award or walking for the first time and stuff like that. So if they look at my social media, they're really not going to find much at all, to be honest. The vetting process has to happen. And I think, when you have over 600 candidates like we have, that is going to be a long, drawn out procedure, because you can look at the obvious social media. You look at the TikTok, the Instagram, the Facebook, the X, and that's quite easy. But we found that one of our candidates had actually said something quite poor on another sort of site. I think it was Unheard or something on their site, and he made a really bad comment on there, so he had to go. Because we don't mess about. If we find out someone that's done that, we don't want anything to do with them. They just go straight away. But if you look, every single newspaper online has all of its comment sections. So there's so much that you have to look through, and people won't necessarily use their real name on the Daily Mail comment side after an article. So how can you find that comment was made from that person? So the vetting procedure is a very difficult one, and it takes time, and it's actually impossible to get everything that anyone has ever put online. So all parties have lost candidates, quite rightly, through when you actually see what a lot of these people have said and done. But it is impossible to vet people, and with a snap election, it's just made it much, much harder.
Well, and it is difficult because everything anybody ever says, everything that anybody ever does, every photo that ever's taken will come back to haunt them at some stage. And this is the biggest problem, isn't it? Because it's given fodder to the media to turn around and say all these horrendous views which have been expressed by some of the candidates, some of the supporters, particularly of reform, are abhorrent. And the real test is how quickly does the leadership deal with it? Do you think the leadership have dealt with it in the appropriate way?
Oh, absolutely. We've got rid of. We've had some complaints. I know the Hate Not Hope mob, who are not very pleasant. So they actually have done quite a lot of deep diving on a lot of our candidates, and if they find something, they publicise it, obviously just to hurt us. So but we want to know. We want to find out anyway. If we've missed something, then fine. I really don't care who finds it. If it shows that there's a bad apple there. We don't want that bad apple affecting the rest of the barrel. So no, they go, and we haven't lost that many, just a few, and they've gone really quickly. Their feet haven't touched the ground.
Okay, Nadia, what's the policy about vetting candidates for your party?
Well, funny you say that. So since it's been a snap election and since the Gaza genocide, our membership has grown, and a lot of people have popped up to want to be candidates. The issue is that we're very thin on the ground. So, to check everyone's social media, it takes a lot of time. And unfortunately, Rishi Sunak and I think Keir Starmer did not give us that chance. So we've had problems as well. With Monty Panesar, for example, we were having him stand for us as a candidate, but he wasn't educated in our school of thought. He was against the genocide, absolutely, but he wasn't clarified on NATO. And that's the issue. It's about education, and it's about talking to candidates and finding out who they are, where they stand, and where we stand. It's great having enthusiastic, motivated members, but if they join too quickly, you need to clarify information first, for example. You need to clarify the education, for example. And unfortunately, because we didn't have many people, I mean, look, in London, before all of these wars, we had about maybe 11, 12 members meeting up. We used to just meet at the cafe or the bar and just talk about, a lot of theory, a lot of things that have happened in the past, war, doesn't it benefit us? And that's it, really. We weren't hundreds and thousands of members, but now it is. So it's not easy. And we need people's empathy for that. It is a snap election, and it was intentional to catch us in this, in this confusing state. So we're trying our best.
So Monty Panesar was, again, very high profile, is a very high profile. I know him very well. And probably equally high profile with George. What was the true story behind him stepping down? Did you encourage him to step down? Did you say you have to step down because you're not consistent with party views? What actually happened, Nadia?
So two things, really. I believe it's also something related to his fan groups in India. And joining us as a party, we are anti-nationalist. And at the moment, unfortunately, Modi is a nationalist figure. So there is that issue of Khalistan. And, for the Punjabi community, there's a lot of confusion there. And there's a lot of possible problems for Monty Panesar regarding advertisements, regarding his connections in India. So that would have affected him financially and professionally. So I think that's a big play as to why he had to step down. But also it is definitely, his stance as well on NATO. We had to clarify that first.
So whose decision was it? Was it the party's decision or Monty's decision?
Oh, it came from both sides. It actually came from both sides. Yeah, it wasn't, us kicking him out. Absolutely not. Because with education, it's absolutely fine. But because of his sponsors in India, he couldn't take the risk. He jumped into wanting to be a politician without knowing that once you're a politician, you have to make a stance. You have to make a decision, and that will affect you.
So did Monty initiate the discussion?
I'm not sure. I will tell you the truth. I'm not sure. I don't know, because I wasn't with the head office in Birmingham.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd always like to be fair to all parties, give them an opportunity to discuss things. Are there any other candidates who have proved to be embarrassing?
I think there was one.
Start with Nadia, then I'll go on to Alan. Go on, then. You're both thinking.
Quite a few in Labour and Conservative. So the Mr. Flip Flop and Mr. Total Flop, their parties have had quite a few dropouts as well. I'm not going to name individuals. If they're gone, they're gone.
Yeah, Nadia, you were halfway through a thought. Who were you thinking of?
Well, we have had our rugby candidate, who he's quite competent, but the thing is, he was caught saying some quite interesting things, and we found out it was because of his reservations about other faiths compared to his own. However, that's been cleared by 5 Pillars of Islam. They talked to him, he discussed it, and it's been clarified that he's not Islamophobic. He has no problems with the Bangladeshi or Islamic community, unlike the leader of the Labour Party, Keir Starmer, who, without a second thought, said publicly he wants to send the Bangladeshis home.
Okay. Want to move on. I mean, candidates have been defecting between the Conservatives and Reform UK, and Richard Tice has been posting on social media today. Do you think this is going to shift public opinion when it comes to the election day? Let's start with you, Alan.
Well, I think it's actually going to be a much bigger story after the election. The Tories are looking at a massive defeat, humiliation. There's absolute vitriol, there's hatred for what they've done to the country. And so, obviously that helps me. But long term, we do need, at the moment they're secret socialists, and we have the, Labour, which is a socialist party. So we do need opposition to the secret socialists and the socialists. And so that is why we are here. That's why we exist now. It's because some people do have centre-right, small c conservative views. The parties have, what they've done is they're actually grown wider and wider. The Tory party is a coalition of two parts. You have the sort of very liberal, in a bad way, use of that word, globalist, socialist side of the parliamentary Tory party, which is the majority of the parliamentary Tory party. And you have a very small number. Nigel said the other day about 50 Tories, but I think it's more like 3 dozen who are, the Spartans, the ERG, who are still small c conservative. And that's where the majority of the voter base is, though. So the party no longer represents its core vote base. And that's why we're getting such support. But also the Labour Party is, I'd say it's a coalition of three parts. You have the hard left, you have the middle left. So you've got the Corbynites, the Blairites, and then you've got the centre left, which has virtually got no representation again in the parliamentary party. But that is where the core vote for the party is. It's the working class white van man who's happy to have a Union Jack on his van outside his house. But the party seems to have drifted away. All these globalist things they're introducing, Nadia was saying before, they're all coming in from America, all these imports, and their core vote doesn't like that. We don't want this gender ideology in our schools. So all of a sudden, these parties are shifting away from their core voters. And that's why we're doing so well, because not only are we getting people from the centre right, but we're getting people from the centre left. Some of our policy are centre-left policy.